Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow. We're back on the air again on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel and Facebook page. Thanks for joining us, and also joining us, of course, a few mates over for a bit of a chat about all things motorsport and other stuff. You wouldn't believe the stuff we've been talking about just before we came on. I will mention the name Val Doonican. There you go. That's one for that's one for you. And speaking of the people who were talking about Val Doonican and other icons of the 1950s or whatever, we've got Chris, we've got Pete, we've got Richard, and we've got Doc once again. G'day, guys. How are we?
All right. How are you?
Good evening, Brett. Good evening, viewers and listeners.
Hello.
Pretty good.
Yes, well, it's coming up this weekend. It's Sandown 500 weekend. It's fantastic. Sandown 500, but it's not the Sandown 500. Why is it the Sandown 500? Anybody got any ideas as to whether this is? What would you prefer? What we're seeing this weekend or the Sandown 500?
The Sandown 500, but I also prefer the mixed format. So you have the two short races, or one short race and a longer race on a race weekend. So I prefer the longer races to the short races anyway.
Yeah.
Because they tend to be smash-up derbies.
Everyone says that at the moment.
Yes.
I think everyone's a little bit over the short races and the extra super soft tyres. I think everyone wants to see a few long races, and therefore the Sandown 500 would be conducive to that.
Yeah, I don't know what. But Pete,
At the beginning of the year, they said that they were still recouping costs from the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's why they only had Bathurst and the Gold Coast and now Adelaide, and they originally didn't have Sandown. But Adelaide wasn't going to be a factor when they decided
also they were talking about it the other day, saying about we're moving into the endurance season, and it's like there's really only one endurance race, which is Bathurst. I mean, Adelaide is not an endurance. Gold Coast is not an endurance race. To me, an endurance race is a race that lasts, probably
7
4
hours.
or more hours, or it has that has two drivers for each car, or, a driver and a co-driver, and that saying that we've got a 500, the Adelaide 500. Well, yeah, it's not. It's actually two Adelaide 250s. It's not the Adelaide 500. And yeah, I'd like to see the Adelaide 500 or the 400 or whatever, but I would much prefer at this stage, like they used to have, is we have all of the short races leading up to now, and now we come into the season of endurance, and by all means have Sandown, Bathurst, Gold Coast, Adelaide for the end, but have them as proper endurance races. Although I suppose there might be a problem with things like refueling and all that at the street circuits. Don't know. I'm sure they could get over
With
that.
the
I'm sure that
500,
wouldn't be
do
a
you
problem.
think just as far as the spectator, whether it's live or streaming on any format, do you think there's more anticipation? I think with the longer formats, everyone's like building up for the bigger races, because there's so much that can possibly happen. Whereas in a short sprint, as Pete just said above me, they just run around, smash up derbies, and bang, you get a few. The top 10 usually just interchange by a few spots unless they drop right out because they had a mechanical failure for some reason. So I think with the bigger races, everyone's like all excited. Oh yeah, look, we've got a whole day of racing, and they might be out of it for the first 50 laps, but they can come back and.
Well, a case in point is the last round in Adelaide, where there was varying weather conditions, but Shane Van Gisbergen basically wasn't unwittingly an advocate for mixing formats and having a longer race, because he made a mockery of all the races. He did the same thing in each race and won, and nobody else,
Did anyone else read an unusual article in the last couple of days about Shane Van Gisbergen and about him, totally about the article, yet there was no quote from him. He wasn't interviewed. All it was just talking about him. Did anyone else read that article? It was quite unusual. No. Did anyone see that?
I think that was referenced to somebody on. I think it might have been Mark Scaife or somebody. Somebody referenced it. I think. I know where it was now. It was on. It was on the Parked Up podcast with Mark. No, they were talking about it. Wasn't on there, but they were talking about the thing, and it was Mark Scaife was pointing out that what we've said 1,000 times. Shane is not. He's not a media player. He's not someone who's throws himself in front of cameras and journalists and all the rest of it. But he is leading the championship. He's a significant star. He's probably probably the number one name, and you want to do stories on him. You want to do fill column inches. The fact that he doesn't provide anything in terms of quotes or anything, they're still going to write about him anyway, and that's the problem. As I've said before, the media abhors a vacuum, and if he's not going to talk to people, people are going to verbal him, whether it's his PR people or...
I'm not alluding to that. The article was about him, but there was no reference from him or no quotes from him or that. So I'm saying, there's not.
There's not because
the article I'm talking about was Jamie Whincup, the whole article talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. And I thought it was funny that because it's got nothing to do with what you were saying about his media credentials or what his anticipation or what he wants. The whole article was about Triple Eight, and Jamie said we're going to give him all the tools and everything that he needs to keep on winning championships. In other words, they were pumping up his stocks to say that this guy, we want you to race until you're 89 in supercars. That's it. Of course, if you want to, but we're going to let you do it, and we're going to give you everything we possibly can till then. So it had nothing to do with his media stuff, Brett. Sorry about that. But I thought it was quite.
Well, no, it has, because that's why they've got to do it. Because I mean, that came through sort of. I got that media release. It came through Triple Eight PR, and they've got to generate material from somebody who doesn't want to do media. So it's obvious that there's going to be no quotes from him.
Yeah, but read between the lines about the article, though. The article is about him. We're going to give him everything he possibly wants to keep on winning championships. I'm referencing what we were talking about last week. How long does he want to race in it, and how long has he got left in it, and what else is his other interest before he gets bored, or does he just want to keep running a supercar around Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, Gen 20 for another 30 years? So that's why I'm funny. I'm sort of looking at the politics of it. Jamie Whincup, and of course, he's obviously boss this year of Triple Eight. He's moved into Roland Dane's old position and bought a stake in it, a percentage, and obviously Jessica owns a large stake in it too, a percentage as well now. 30% each, I think they are. So they're 60% of the team. It's funny how they're doing the PR and pumping up Shane, and probably they're just using as another avenue, saying, we want you here forever. We want you to keep on running around a supercar. But, it's not, they're just using a different angle. I thought it was funny. Nothing to do with the media side of it I was talking about. Sorry, Brett. I was just looking at how they're angling him to keep him in the business for since the end of time.
Okay, let's have a look at. We'll say hello to some of the regular crew. Paul van den Akker is with us. Go Nackers, how are you? I mean, I imagine he'll be busy on the weekend as much as this. So I'm sort of assuming. Are you out at Sandown, Paul? I'm not sure. Might be there.
You flew up north last week, so
up with
this week.
Yes, I won't have to go as far. Box. Time to turn the brightness down. Yes, well, that's because I mean, obviously, like Chris's bald head is reflecting. That's just there. So there's not much we can do about it, I'm afraid. Would have nothing to do with what I'm wearing.
The blue car behind his head. That's probably.
Yeah, that's it. That's from whereabouts? That's at the island, Chris.
At the island, the Historics.
The Historics, yeah, because I remember they had all those Western Australian guys came across, and I think we did a story on the green car.
We did.
That was there. We did, yeah. So that was there for a while. Virtual R is joining us. Go Roy, how are you? Evening to him. We've been talking about a few things we're planning. Virtual R saying let's move Sandown to less relevance in anticipation of sale super sprint. The interesting thing is, I mean, supercars have apparently, off the record, apparently the tentative calendar for 2023 certainly has Sandown on the calendar. I think we mentioned that last week. So it is there, and at the moment, so they're going to get at least another year out of it. So this won't be the last time you'll see supercars at Sandown, apparently, but who knows? Also, Tony's with us again. Tony Pete, g'day Tony. Nice for you to join us as well. But I'm sort of I'm actually heading out to Sandown tomorrow. I haven't been to a supercar meeting for years and years. In fact, I was talking to Richard about this the other day. The last time that I went, and probably the last time that he went as well, was, God, how many years ago was that down at Phillip Island?
Wow, when we were actual spectators.
When we were spectators.
Wow, that was a fair while ago. I think I had a lot more hair too.
So did I.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that's a big club, you know.
A new human being with the amount of hair we've all lost.
But I think that was one of the things, because if you remember, we went down there and we went down in your van and you had all of the gear for a bit of a barbecue, a bit of a cook up, and we took down something to have a convivial drink and all the rest of it. And they said, "No, you can't do that. No, that's all. That's very verboten."
Can't be a traditional Australian and have a barbecue and a beer. Jeez, that's
no. You could buy beer at about $10 a glass.
But the thing was, you bought the wrong beer, because if you remember, I met an old a neighbour of mine, Chad, who might be watching. Go, Chad, if you are, my old next door neighbour, and he'd got tickets through his work. He actually used to work for the mob that you're working for Doc, at Woolworths over at the Mulgrave, over at the warehouse there, and he and his mates there all got free passes to turn up, and they all turned up and went to get a bit of refreshment, and were told, no, you can't get a VB or a Carlton Draft or something. We are only selling 4X. So they turned around and said, okay, in that case, we'll see you later. And they were out of the place by 10:30.
No riots or natives were restless. Jeez. Oh.
I thought the whole setup was like Benny Hill Tours, you know, and they were charging a fortune.
Actually, I tell you what, Paul's getting the frequent flyer miles up, getting back up to Queensland again for the motocross.
Yeah, I honestly flew up there last week. I think it was 2 in 2 weeks. So yeah, obviously that.
Yeah, so he's heading back up again, and
you got to get your maps right, Paul. Everyone's telling you, everyone's saying you're flying over to England or.
Well, that's Facebook. Facebook is on so many levels. Facebook is having problems at the moment. Yeah, Brett Sellers is saying, yeah, that was the problem we had, Brett. That we had, like we couldn't have a barbecue, couldn't have, that was the same situation we were in, and it was just. It was crazy, and it's the same on the weekend. As I said, I'm going tomorrow. Our mate, I was going anyway, but our mate Troy Shembry from the Motorsport Fan Zone, sponsor of the show for a couple of years, great supporter of the show, and father of Dick Shembry, and also Bianca, his daughter, who's sung on the program a couple of times. He's out there with Penrite. They're taking the supercart out there to put on display at the merchandise stand, and he got a pass. He rang me today and said, "Are you coming over?" And I said, "Well, I'm coming over Friday. Thinking of coming over Friday." So he's got a pass. So that'll be good, because I think it's $35 or something for tomorrow. But I certainly don't have the time or certainly the money to do it for the whole weekend. But just want to go and have a look at it again and just see if it excites me. See what's changed since the last time we went. And yeah, I might wave might wave the phone around. I think that's the thing. I think Roy found a thing somewhere saying that you're not allowed to post more than 15 seconds of footage from the event on your social media and all that. I might press my luck on that one.
Risky. I was going to say it's a bit risky. You'll probably have to fight. You have to fight off 10 strikes anyway, and then you can still get away with it. Anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
Is it worth the hassle?
Yeah, so it looks like we're losing another track. Paul saying that the last ever motocross round at Coolum leases up and not being renewed, which we've seen everywhere. Although one thing that is coming up, and I've got to talk to people for the upcoming season of In Pit Lane. We'll do a story on it when I catch up with someone. There's a group of people are planning and have got bought some land to build a track at Horsham, a small track.
Oh,
Yeah, just about I think it's only about 1.8 or 2 kilometres or something. So really, really small.
that's
as
Horsham Hurricane country up there.
Horsham Hurricanes. Tell us about the Horsham Hurricanes.
Horsham Hurricane is Kevin McGee. He came from Horsham.
Well,
Famous,
Kevin is a part. Kevin is a part of the group that are putting it together. There is
Not
a group,
surprising.
and yeah,
a
he's
famous Australian motorcycle rider.
yeah, he's backing them and he's helping them get knock a few doors down and all the rest of it. But it's going to be a very, very small thing. But it'll be good if it comes up. So we will talk to somebody from the Horsham Motorsport Complex for what it is at some stage over the next few weeks on when In Pit Lane comes back on September the 4th.
Might even be worth a road trip. I do have a lot of family up there. So
You do have a lot of family up there. I don't have any family, unfortunately, in Indonesia because Indonesia. But apparently, it's Happy Independence Day for
Yeah.
Dimas. Yes, Happy Independence Day, Indonesia. There's
to
quite
you too,
the
Dimas.
yeah, quite the motorsport scene over in Indonesia. I would like to go over and have a look at it at some stage. Same with Thailand too. Thailand is like really exploding, and I think they've got another street race coming up in a couple of weeks' time in the Thai Super Series. So motorsport in various countries in Asia is slowly but surely growing. But they've had Indonesia has had a lot of motorsport for years in terms of the Indonesian Grand Prix back in the late 1960s and early 70s. You had lots of the Australian guys over there: Max Stewart, Gary Cooper, John McCormick, Kevin Bartlett. All those people would go over to Indonesia, and they'd sort of do the Asian round, including Macau and Malaysia and all that sort of thing. So.
Very, very good. No, it's good to see it all coming out of hibernation. The more, the merrier.
Yeah, do you know that Brett Sellers is asking the question, how long's MotoGP got? It has been extended, hasn't it, Doc?
Yeah, it has. Foxy's Foxy by name, Foxy by nature. It'll keep going. He's happy to do it out there as long as he's alive. That he's basically said whenever he's ever does a rare interview that the MotoGP, as long as the government keeps on wanting to back it to a certain extent, and as long as he owns the track, it'll keep going on there forever. So, I mean, those sorts of negotiations happen from time to time.
And that's one of the things he said very clearly. I mean, his son Andrew has said in interviews with us years ago in terms of like modifications and things that people wanted done with the track. He said anything that is done at Phillip Island has to be done under the basis that, as far as they're concerned, Phillip Island is a motorcycle track.
Yep.
And if cars are going to have to live, because their priority, their three biggest meetings is the Historic Bikes event in Australia, Day Weekend, World Superbikes and MotoGP. They're their three biggest. Three biggest events.
And look,
I did hear a whisper that.
Sorry, go ahead.
On the rumour file the other day that another state has put in a significant bid to take it over.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that's when
before.
that'll prick up old Lindsay's ears a little bit. And
Did they say who it was?
No, they didn't say who or where it was.
So,
Once again, it was 3AW's rumour file that broadcast it, so who knows?
Well, we know. I mean, they've got a very sort of dodgy hit and miss hit and miss thing. But
say, I'm in Rare Company, and I know a few of my counterparts out there, and maybe even the watchers and listeners to the show. It's fantastic to have. But I went 10 years straight. I did 20 meetings in 10 years at Phillip Island for World Superbikes and MotoGP, even with a broken leg one year. And the crowds didn't drop below 45,000. That sort of landscape. When Casey Stoner was at the top of his game, and you had one or two in the support categories, you get up to 70,000, and it was like you couldn't get out of the place within a couple of hours. It was just great. So with Jack still on the Ducati this year, factory Ducati, it's great. Remy Gardner's also will feature as well too in the top.
Yeah,
top
what have you heard
so,
about that? I mean, the rumours are going around, very strong rumours at the moment, that Remy's on borrowed time, perhaps.
Is thin ice, and it's Phillip Island cold thin ice too, as well too, off Siberia. So, look, I don't think if he is on that. If he is in that sort of hot water, then in the cauldron, it won't happen until after MotoGP down at Phillip Island. They wouldn't do it then. They'd have a mass revolt if they took him out of the place. But look, that's just a wait and see type tactic. There's not much to actually talk about MotoGP, so we'll just get out of the way now because it's the Austrian GP this week. So really not much news other than I think there's been some reports this week that Quartararo's man for beat. That's coming from Marc Marquez, but he needs Yamaha to pull their fingers out and give him a better bike. But he's still probably a shoe-in for the title if they can help him out there. And good luck to Aleix Espargaro, who's riding with a broken foot this week. So he's got, I know how that feels, right, with broken bones too. So he'll be in a painful, he'll probably get an injection before the race and before practice, and all the best. And he's had an absolute prime year. The Espargaro brothers have done quite well on the machinery that they've had underneath them. So, and proved to be, in the genes. So that's a quick wrap up of the MotoGP early this week.
Yeah, and this is something coming out of Paul. Paul here, so this, I've clicked on the wrong one. There you go. Paul saying that the Ireland Classic not likely to happen, at least not in the form it was run in the past. If you know anything more about that, Paul, let us know about that. I know that one thing that because they were very, very keen on it is that the Fox family, Andrew in particular, was very keen to try and merge the bikes and the cars in terms of the historics and have sort of a Goodwood Festival of Speed type event. And of course, the VHRR were not even remotely interested, but I know Andrew was very, very keen to try and bring that together and perhaps have that as almost like a speed week type thing, where they would have stuff happening over the Australia Day long weekend, and they would have like a 4 or 5 day meeting with more emphasis, as he said, on bringing in major international cars and bikes to race down there, rather than making it sort of just a general VHRR sort of general event. But yes, it'll be interesting to see up. Also, Paul saying that Casey Stoner turned up to the Queensland motocross on the weekend, which wouldn't surprise me. He's very much a down to earth sort of guy. He still loves his bikes and all the rest of it. He just didn't like, a bit like Shane. He never liked the media attention. We had a thing with Casey years ago.
Took a break from fishing to go to it.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, we had a thing down here at Iveco with Casey Stoner years ago, and you couldn't get 2 words out of him. And then somebody who was on our crew at the time happened, just said something about Channel 31. And he said, "Oh, I watch all the fishing shows on Channel 31. And I've been a guest on He just came alive as soon as they took, forget about motorcycle racing. You couldn't give a stuff, like that was the job. But, he loves his fishing, and he has been on some of the fishing shows on 31 and other fishing shows on other stations quite a few times, because he's a mad fisherman. So very incredibly talented.
So he's probably dropped off at the Queensland Moto Park there, just in between a few fishing chips, between a few charters up there, just to drop in track and see what it is. But look, if we did have the privilege of catching up with Casey and we're able to have a chat, hopefully give us more than 2 words. What I'd like to probably ask him, if being obviously down the motorsport channels that we go these days, is you've been doing a lot of test riding for a few different bikes over the years. Now with, say, Honda and Ducati, I would say not the bikes that you're riding who for, but how do you go about the feedback and the feel on the bike, and how do you transition the information back to the team that you're talking about the bike now? And I reckon that'd be a great conversation to have with him, how he expresses it in words on what he thinks he can improve the bike and how they compare to, say, 10, 15 years ago when he was riding it at the peak level. So I reckon you probably get a few more than 2 words out of him if you actually talk properly about bikes and technical stuff with him.
Yeah, he's a nice guy, but as I said, not a bit like Shane. I mean, a bit like Shane Van Gisbergen. Not really wasn't keen on the whole media thing, and they sort of paraded him out for this big event at Iveco, and you could tell with every single fibre of his being he did not want to be there. So it was like I'm here, I'm doing my job, I'm meeting my commitments to my sponsor, and I'll smile and I'll be pleasant, but get me the hell out of here.
If I got a Ducati Motors manual out, I reckon he'd sign it though.
I'm sure he will. He would. As I said, he's a nice guy. So Dave Stillwell joining us in just a moment. I think if he comes through. So I'm assuming that Dave will be busy this weekend as well.
Driving to Sandown.
Yeah.
Good evening. Good evening, gents. Can we hear me?
No, there we are. He's out and about somewhere. Yes, we can. Yes, we can hear you. It is not raining in Tokyo. Repeat. It is not raining in Tokyo. Can you hear us?
What's that?
Interesting discussion about the potential of the historic meetings at Phillip Island having a change, because in the last week we've also seen the announcement of the Adelaide Motorsport Festival coming back at a new time of year, earlier in the year, around about the Phillip Island historic time.
The week before the Grand Prix, yes, same weekend.
And Grand Prix was released this week as a pretty certain date of March 30th.
30th, yep.
So
the race would be on April the 3rd or 2nd.
Yeah, on the start of the weekend.
It would be interesting having all you talk about the cross-pollination between the motorsport world and the fishing world. Perhaps Sam Shaheen and the Peregrine Corporation are missing a trick without putting a bunch of trout ponds and some adventure fishing ponds out at the bend. I mean, they've got the space for it, and pretty sure they can pull both salt and fresh water out of the Murray that close to the Gulf.
When were you the last time over at the bend, Stilly?
The two supercars meetings back to back in 2020.
Right. Obviously, you haven't gone outside the boundaries much, because I was staying at Meningie when I was over there for the Age Le Mans, and there is a lake just out the road there. It's called the Pink Lake. So you probably just need to broaden your map on Google Maps a little bit further and have a look. So there is a map there. All that's got to happen is Sam's got to buy that and put some trout in it now.
Job done.
I see Sam is having some serious words about he's clearly his nose is out of joint about all of the government money and all the support that is being ploughed into the return of the Adelaide 500, and making the point that we've made sort of on many occasions that ultimately governments and communities will probably tire of some of these events, and when they go, it's like John Davison's description of the Grand Prix at Albert Park. It was like it was the event from Mars. It flies in, it dazzles us with its wonderful technology, and then it leaves without a trace. So, I can see why he'd be upset about that. But having said that, I think it's fabulous that the Adelaide 500 is coming back, and the Classic. I think they'd be both a couple of really good things. But yes, I hadn't really thought about that date until you mentioned it, because I saw that the week before the Grand Prix, and I thought, oh, that's interesting, and it sort of didn't click that that's the same weekend as Phillip Island. Although they were spread apart, so you could, if the two of them decided to work together, which would make a lot of sense. It'd
be a first time in motorsport in this country.
Would it ever? Yeah, but I mean, you could have the Phillip Island Classic. You have the Phillip Island Classic on the Labor Day weekend, which is earlier in March, and then those cars could go over to. I mean, I know it's sort of it's all back to the front. Going from Melbourne over to Adelaide and then coming back for the Grand Prix, but they could work together, and that was one of the things in terms of getting that the Phillip Island race earlier, because a lot of the internationals that we spoke to, the international visitors who were racing in New Zealand, the Formula 5000 guys, some of the other people were there. They were saying, look, we'd love to bring the cars just across the Tasman and race at Phillip Island. It'd be fantastic, but it's just too late in the season where it is now, because they said, once we get the cars, unless we fly the cars over, if we put them on a ship, there's a danger they won't get back in time for the European season. So whereas they could come out, they could finish the European season, put the cars on the ship, let them come into New Zealand over the summer period, come down and have a warm Christmas in New Zealand, have a couple of races in sort of January and February, put the cars back on the ship, send them off home, and they would be back in early April and in plenty of time for the first of the big European races. But
another notable mention is also too, Matt Braid has cashed in his chips at the New Sydney Casino up there in New South Wales, and conceded defeat. The S5000s won't be at the Australian Grand Prix next year because with the the F2s and F3s all on the card now as well, though, too. And then obviously the supercars will get a Guernsey. Matt Braid has said that there pretty much won't be much room left on the card for the weekend to be able to squeeze in an S5000. I'm even sceptical whether the Carrera Cup will even get a Guernsey now, whether the Porsches will get to run around because there may not be enough room.
The S5000s did get a dud, as I've said before, did get a dud deal this year at the Grand Prix.
But Matt's come out and made statements this week now, though.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that. I mean, the moment they announced Formula 2 and Formula 3 coming over here, there was no way they were going to have yet another open wheeler category, and one that may not sort of... I think it's probably better for the S5000s, because if you have a look at sort of things like lap times and all the rest of it, you would imagine that probably even Formula 3 is probably going to be quicker than the S5000s. So... yeah, I think that they might not compare well, so it's going to be hard. It's a hard sell now, but with not having the Grand Prix, it's going to be a hard sell for S5000 unless they can get a few sort of, really good meetings behind them, that, some real blue ribbon events. It's a real uphill battle, I'm afraid, for the S5000s.
But as we've spoken about before, it's the kind of category that, if we embrace, Chris Lambden's original vision where it would be a revival of the Tasman series and those continual focus on, racing when the weather is good or where the weather is good, the plan is that hopefully with some ARG or ARG stakeholder investment in race, in the supercars ownership structure, you could put S5000 on it, you'd run them at the Gold Coast, you'd run them on the streets of Adelaide. There's October and December. You do another one-off meeting as ARG has done with their Speed Series in Tasmania. You have another meeting in Victoria, either at Phillip Island or potentially at the Grand Prix. And then also in November, they get in Bathurst. There's 5 meetings across 5 months, end of the season, outside of the European Open Wheel Series. Leave January mostly free, so it's not interfering with the Toyota Racing Series. And then you've actually got a genuine chance of attracting some overseas interest.
I think that's going to be the thing in terms of New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand, I think, would love to come on board, but as you say, the Toyota Racing Series is just so well supported over there. But by Toyota and by Motorsport New Zealand, I think they'd be loath to sort of bring anything in that might take a bit of attention away from it. But as you said, later in the year, or even earlier in, even the year before. I mean, if you ran at Adelaide, and then sort of you could get something, early in the season, sort of, perhaps early December in New Zealand somewhere, or sometime sort of late-ish or mid-January. It might go, but they're not going to get the full season in there because they wouldn't want to sort of detract from Formula Toyota at all because it's just so successful. But yes, and by the way, Stuart, the answer is no. You can't have swearing. Stuart's doing pre-production on a pilot. Lucky pilot. There you go. So
you're doing pre-production. Very, very good. Well, just talking a little bit about international stuff. Did anyone see the release of the new Porsche 911 RS spec for the road this week?
The 911 GT3 RS.
GT3, yeah.
Where Porsche takes their most high-tech track, normally aspirated track weapon, and turns it up to 11. Yes, I've seen the video from a number of outlets. Of course, great video with Andreas Preuniger, the head of Porsche GT Cars, who obviously oversees the development of cars like the Cayman GT4, the Porsche GT3 in its various guise, as well as the Porsche GT2. And of course, that feeds right into the motorsport categories. Again, incredible cars. There'll be limited production. The very lucky people that get access to them. A few of them will sit in garages, accruing, immense amounts of return on investment year on year.
Well,
others
I'm
will
looking
be,
at putting a number plate on it, Stilly.
I was about to say, others will be driven in the manner intended by Porsche, and they'll be spanked.
And he's dropped. Just when he's going to hit the. He was just about to hit the high note.
Someone hit the dump button.
Oh, what I was alluding to was that a lucky few that Stilly was about to mention will be able to put a number plate on them, and they will be road legal. So,
yes. Well, that's always been the thing about about Porsche. The cars they're fast and they're in inverted commas affordable. I mean, they're not like a Bugatti or even a McLaren or something like that. I must admit, I took a photo the other day, sort of parked in one of the behind one of the warehouses over at Springvale while I was doing some shopping, and when I came back, sitting alongside the Getz when I came back was a brand new McLaren. Looked very out of place in the back blocks of in a car park in Springvale, in amongst the Getzes and
some shipping containers. Was it there, Brett?
No, it was.
It
was in amongst all of the Vietnamese restaurants and all the places I was going over to get my supplies of.
As on a side note, there's been a lot of shipping
strange
containers seized in the last few weeks with over like $2 million worth of drugs and stuff like that. I just thought, there might have been some shipping containers alongside. They were, and smile for the camera that are hidden in about 20 different places with the federal police watching you. That got you gets his on. So, anyway, speaking of McLaren, congratulations, Lando Norris. He's got an extension of his contract to the end of 2025 as well now too.
Well, good on him. Now, Paul's saying that the Stuttfest at Winton has been. I hadn't caught up with that was cancelled. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a shame. That was going to be a bit like Rennsport, sort of a local version of that. They had Rennsport at Sydney Motorsport Park a few years back, but obviously the one it's becoming a very crowded calendar. I mean, when we were in the studio on Tuesday night doing some stuff for the upcoming season of In Pit Lane, young Jason, one of the crew, said, "Is there any motorsport coming up locally that you're going to be out?" And it's like, yeah, basically, over the next few months. If we have the money and we have the time and they open the doors for us and let us in. Yeah, there's motorsport happening everywhere. So
every weekend,
it's pretty much every weekend.
Multiple choice every weekend. If there was half a dozen of us, we could clone ourselves, and have an unlimited amount of gig on a computer or a PC or something. We could probably hold
enough flaggies and officials to do all the meetings.
Yeah,
that's going to be the problem. There are a couple of things coming up. There's a whole bunch of major things happening. In fact, I think on the weekend that Jason and I are down at Baskerville, there's something at Winton. There's drags up at Heathcote. There's a whole bunch of things. Speaking of drags at Heathcote, coming up in a couple of weeks' time. The top fuelers are coming back there, but before that, there's we talk about historic racing, haven't talked much about historic drag racing, and coming up at Heathcote in a couple of weeks' time is a big nostalgia meeting, which will have a lot of famous old drag cars from the 1960s and 70s. Ron Harrop's original FJ, the Harrop's Howler, will be there, and Ron will be there with it. That'll be great. So I'm certainly going up for that. I've spoken to Lance and Steve and the guys at Heathcote, and certainly will be going up and doing some stories on some of those cars. But also coming up on the first episode of In Pit Lane on September the 8th, Jeff Orrell, a local drag racing historian, is going to join us and talk about some of the cars we see and the rise. Thankfully, eventually, they're sort of catching up now in terms of, because drag racing never really cared about its past. In a way, it was like the cars raced, and when they were finished racing, they pushed them aside and built something new, and they didn't bother about the old stuff.
Well,
now they're
morphed into a
starting
different
to.
car.
Yeah, that's it. Now they're going in and they're finding the originals, and they're starting to rebuild them. And a lot of those cars will be at Heathcote in a couple of weeks' time. So really looking forward to that. So that's on September 8th. The week before, August the 30th, live, not this Tuesday night, but the following Tuesday night, will be a special live edition of In Pit Lane just online for YouTube and Facebook as well. There was a bit of a studio. I think we've got the studio. We planned to do a show, so we'll be in there. So that will be a special online-only edition of In Pit Lane coming up as well. And so stay tuned to the Facebook group, and that will tell you who the guests are coming up on that in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, it's all sort of happening again.
It's just simmering in the background, ready to burst.
Well, I hope it's ready to burst, because the main thing is that I'm not ready to burst. It's like,
well, your shirt is. I mean,
Yes.
the shirt.
Looks like it already has.
Thank you. I think I'll be wearing this tomorrow. Actually, I think so. If you'll be able to pick me out if you're heading out to Sandown tomorrow at some stage, and I'll be easy to find.
If it changes colour, it's one of those the old 1980s trans colour shirts.
Yeah, what were they called? Hypercolour, yeah.
The old hypercolour t-shirts.
Don't forget the scratch and smell t-shirts.
Yeah, no, trust me, you don't want to scratch and smell anywhere.
Scratch and smell.
Yeah, anything you wouldn't want to scratch and smell anything from the 80s anymore. It'd be.
You certainly wouldn't want to scratch and smell anything from the 60s either, and that's hello, that's me. So
you're gonna get out. You're gonna get acid anyway.
Okay, so let's see. By the way, yes, as we pointed out on the bottom of the thing, tickets for the Top Fuel round at Heathcote Park have gone on sale. Get in very, very quickly. They are selling like nobody's business. The last meeting basically sold out completely. There is more room this time around. Now, also coming up, when I'm up there at some stage, there's some more things that are being announced for Heathcote Park. Huge news coming up for the future of Heathcote Park Raceway, and we'll be covering that on In Pit Lane as well. Some really exciting stuff that's happening that we know that the improvements that Lance and the team have made up there, there's a lot more around the corner, and it's really, really exciting, really big news. So,
if you're going to Bendigo, Brett, I'll send you up on a mission. You can go and check on my car and do some stuff for me if you like. There, that'd be good.
Yeah, well, I'm going up on the. I go up on the for the nostalgia. I'm just going up for the one night, but for the Top Fuelers, as I said, whether we get accreditation as media or not, I've decided I'm going to the Top Fuelers. If I've got to go in there and play spectators, I'm going to see the Top Fuelers.
I might join you. You never know. I've got reason to be up there every second weekend if I have to be. So yeah, I might join you. We'll see.
Yep. We'll be. I'll certainly be up there, and we should be right. But anyway, that's coming up. So that's interesting. Also coming, Greg Murphy has been announced as the New Zealand motorsport manager for Tony Quinn's operations there. We know that Tony is very heavily involved in and invested in New Zealand motorsport with Highland Park and his involvement with Hampton Downs, and has announced that Greg Murphy will be sort of his man on the scene over there. And incidentally, Tony is of course out of hospital now, but still recovering from his big crash, and he's sort of hinting that perhaps his days behind the wheel may be numbered. He was sort of, I don't think he's been a good patient.
Thinking about semi-retiring.
Thinking about going back to cleaning toilets.
Yeah, back to his gurney, you reckon, Pete?
Yes.
But operating gurney machines in a high pressure manner rather than the high pressure behind a wheel. There.
Yeah, coming up this weekend, as Mad Cow Mark is saying, Mark, Jamboree 22. Yeah,
That'd just be great.
the rotaries and the fast fours and all of it, some really wild cars, and a very very big meeting happening on the YouTube channel, Overtaking Lane. There's lots of lanes coming up. We've got Overtaking Lane and In the Fast Lane and all that. So I'm not sure whether we should be talking to our legal team right now. If our legal team, I think, is I'll have to wait and see if they get out on parole. So. We'll have to...
You need a criminal lawyer.
Yeah. We can get that. We can get.
We need that. We need, instead of lawyer X, we need lawyer X, Y, and Z. But anyway.
Yeah, Roy pointing out night racing coming to Heathcote. They'd head up on midday and catch 5 hours or so of racing. The problem is you've got to come back again. That's the problem. But even for the nostalgia thing, I think they're not starting until around 11 a.m. And I think the same for the top fuel as well. That's why they're spreading the top fuel over the 2 days. So yeah, you'll get 2 good days of racing. As I said, I've decided to splurge, put my hand in my pocket, and found a little bit of cash down the back of it, and just thought, because I was like, damn it, I'm definitely going to that, and so I'll be up there for a couple of days, and hopefully we will get there. David Towers talking to us. David runs the GPS M3, the beautiful Group A M3, and just saying, wanted to say thanks to all the flaggies and the fire crews at Winton. Some pretty trying conditions. And looking out the window now, the people at Sandown, I mean, they had a pretty rough day at the state rounds last Sunday. Sunday afternoon, it sort of came in, and they got pretty soaked, and they're probably going to get pretty soaked tomorrow and Saturday as well.
That's
David had a good run with. Sorry, I was just going to say David had a good run with Mike Roddy.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Well, Mike in the Jaguar is racing there. So so they've been racing for around. It's good to see all those Group A cars sort of getting around, and there's a few coming from overseas as well. Sort of, we know the ones that that actually race here, like David's car and Mike's car and all the rest, and all the Commodores and all the rest, and a couple of the Sierras, but there are some other cars that have come in from overseas as well. So that's always good. Hopefully we'll see some of those cars down at Baskerville as well. I know there's some Group A and C cars. There's quite a few of them going down to Baskerville, and we'll have a special edition of In Pit Lane. That'll be the first week of November, the week of the Melbourne Cup. We'll have a special half hour dedicated to the Baskerville Historic meeting. So I'm really looking forward to that. A lot of Elfins going down there as well. Bill Hemming as Bill can't go down himself, but he's given over some of the collection and the transport and all the rest of it to a few of the local guys. Our mate Mark from South Australia is taking his car down there, the sports car, as well, and they're all heading down for that race. So that'll be a big meeting but unfortunately, once again, there's a clash, because there's a race happening, a historic race, once again the same weekend over at the Bend as well. So very sad. It's obviously going to cost both meetings the possibility of the few cars that can't be in 2 places at once. So it would be nice if everybody could work together.
Well, a lot of the cars are coming out of the woodwork as well, though, too. I think people have realised in the last 2 or 3 years, even if they did have them out previous to that for a little bit, that ones have had them hidden away a long term, thinking, well, we've just gone through 2 or 3 years where we couldn't even get ourselves out, let alone a piece of machinery. I did see a post from a little group I follow there on FB as well too. There was a Matic, I think it hasn't been out for 20 years, that someone's just getting out of their garage for the first time, and then that might appear at a race in the next, or at a meeting in the next year or two, which would be great.
Would be interested in finding out about that. That's for sure.
I've got my eyes on that. I've got my little burning eyes on that one. I don't.
Yeah, find out. Get some details about that. So we're talking about a Matic sports car or a 5000?
A little 5,000, I think it was. So
The 5,000.
that's not a sports car. It was a 5,000 from the pick I saw. It had been wheeled out and they've had it hidden away in their garage for 20 years. So I'll have to find out a little bit more detail, but I only just saw a glimpse of it. They're not giving too much away because I don't want too many people to obviously know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I'm trying to think of, because I knew where a lot of them, where most of them were. One was destroyed. One was totally destroyed. I know Darcy Russell had one of the ex-John Goss cars, and that was there. Brian and Gavin Saylor had the other one that we did the interview with Derek Neller, which is on the two-part interview with Derek Neller, who was Frank Matich's chief mechanic, and we were over there at the workshop there in front of the Matich, the A50. Talking about that particular car, and that's on the YouTube channel if you haven't caught up with that. Particularly the second part. We did a part 2 where we talked about how Frank was so far ahead of his time in terms of being something of a pioneer in the early sort of look at ground effects in a way. I mean, they didn't have, as I said at the time, they didn't have the wind tunnels and everything to test it, but Frank was, if you have a look at it, Frank had a double wing, including one mounted basically as a rear diffuser, and that was back in 1972. So he was way ahead of his time.
Formula One is employing people at the moment. They could use his expertise. They're all scrambling to get their. That's what my post for at the moment.
He's on ahead, hasn't he?
I'm going to pass on everyone. If everyone could send in their CVs to me, and I'll pass them to all the Formula One teams. They're all looking at for the 2023 rules with the new flooring. So I'm sure Adrian Newey's
2022.
Sorry.
Yeah, they're going to start. Yeah, they're starting. They're starting
Belgium.
early. Yeah, starting in Belgium, and there's a few of the teams that are saying there could be a little bit of a shake-up. Belgium, Spa Spa is always interesting, and incidentally, at the moment, it'll be the last race at Spa for quite some, which would be an absolute tragedy because and a lot of the drivers are really angry about it as well. They're saying no, if we're going to have a world championship that is actually worth being called a world championship, we really do need to race at Spa.
Even though it's
I'm
been
sure
sanitised.
Sorry, go Pete.
Even though Spa has been sanitised since last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yeah, it doesn't seem to have made that much. They haven't. I don't think they've ruined it. It has been made safe, and I think it had to be made a bit safer. But it's still a challenge. It's still a great. Still a great track. David will be at Baskerville, has the lap record. Yeah, I mean the BMW
champion.
That would be it's the ideal circuit for. It's a great little circuit. I'm really looking forward to. As I said last week, it's a track I've never actually been to before, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Make sure you get that JPS BMW.
We will. We've covered it in the past. We'll be there and having a look at. What I'm really looking forward to in terms of that is finding some of those Tasmanian cars, the sort of things that you just don't see. They don't come over here. They've just been sort of they come out once or twice a year. In Tasmania, and yet they've got sort of provenance over there that like some of the old sports sedans, and yes, I'm really looking forward to going over there and having a look at some of the cars that get over there.
Brett. I've got a hunch. You just put 2 and 2 and got 5 for me there. If there are these cars are over in Tassie, and there's probably a few there in the woodwork, and they can crawl out of the cracks. Now that the Spirit of Tasmania won't be docking in the Port of Melbourne anymore, it wouldn't surprise me that maybe because it's obviously kicks off in October as well too, so it's not that far away before it cancels its fees at the Port of Melbourne. They can just jump off the ship there in Geelong and go straight to the Geelong Revival later this year or maybe even next year. So it may be more convenient for those cars to actually come back to the mainland once in a while, and we might see them at the Geelong Revival down the track.
Of course, the problem is that it's just so expensive. I mean, that was talking to the guys from the Hobart Sporting Car Club and the people behind the Baskerville there. I mean, they've got some sponsorship and some support from the Tasmanian government and from the ferry and West Point Casino. And thank you, West Point Casino, for your sponsorship of the Baskerville Historic, because they're providing Jason and I with the rooms for the 2 nights. So looking forward to that. That'll make a change from staying in the youth hostel at Phillip Island. Now that we're not at the Ramada anymore.
Nice.
But yeah, so that'll be really. That'll be really good as well. Dave pointing out, why do Tasmanian cars run V engines? 2 heads.
Yes.
So there you go.
There.
South Australian jokes will be out next.
Yeah,
Why can
so,
Tasmania proof that Tasmanians can swim?
Yeah, it'd be good if it doesn't rain at Spa. Yes, I mean last year's Spa. Let's hope that I don't mind if it rains at Spa as long as they don't cancel the race, and as long as if they do cancel it, they don't give points for something that wasn't actually a race. I mean that was a disgrace, that, which I think they would now acknowledge.
Yes.
One more quick thing, Brett, we should mention before we even think about wrapping up, and thanks to our sponsor extraordinaire, Roy was talking about there's some boat racing over at Melton this weekend too.
Yeah, well, I think there'll be boat racing at Sandown too tomorrow, if the way things are going. So, got there. Yeah, I don't know how many boats are out there. I mean, we covered boats a few times over the years on the show, and they're really exciting. They're great. They're great to cover. Yeah, if it was a nice day, but I think it's a fairly low key event, and I think it's a gold coin donation to local charities or something like that. So if you're over in Melton and you're not working, like Stuart probably is, head over to the Melton Reservoir and have a look at some racing, some powerboat racing, and if it's half a nice day, might even try and get over there myself. But
take your overalls because you might get a bit of mud thrown at you.
Yeah, so
there you go.
Yeah,
Thanks,
there you
Roy.
go. So Royce, 9 a.m. until sometime in the afternoon. So
There used to be actually. I wonder if they've got any connections. I'll have to talk to Roy about this down the tracks shortly. The Carrum Downs used to have a regular boat racing as well there too, because when I was competing back in a Victorian Jet Ski Championship in the 90s, we always had to fit in, and they fit in with us with the boats racing as well. Though do down the
that was the drag boat racing, which we covered quite a lot of in the day. I spoke to somebody from the drag boat club. They've had some real. I mean, with COVID, everybody's had some problems, and they've really had problems just getting decent fields together, and getting every. But the guy I was speaking to was saying that they were confident that they were going to have a couple of bigger meetings coming up, and they were hoping to get a couple of the faster boats, a couple of blow and hydros, and that sort of thing. The one thing I saw there was only the one in the country, I think, but apparently now I think there's 2, is a top fuel hydro. I mean, just think of that, 10,000 horsepower on water, and it looks as spectacular as that sounds. So Stuart is saying apparently for the there's a stream. There's a stream. I thought it was on a reservoir, but never mind.
Grandpa joke.
Good one.
So there you go. I got to be here Wednesday though. I recommend the schnitzel. Now, so anyway. But anyway, so that's coming. So keep an eye out for that. There might be a live stream. Certainly good. It's certainly a bit like Speedway. It would be a good and relatively straightforward thing to actually do live streams for, and to do it properly. And as we keep saying, we'll we're available. We've got all the gear. Anyway, speaking of which, I just saw it's the magic hour. The hour is now gone. So I will say, let's wrap it up. Guys, remember, In Pit Lane returning to Channel 31 on September the 8th, but also coming up on August the 30th, there will be a special edition, a live show from the studios of RMIT Student Television in the heart of Grand Prix City, Melbourne. That's coming up on August the 30th, and then we get back into a full series of In Pit Lane on Channel 31 Melbourne. Hopefully in Adelaide too. I've tried to contact the people from Adelaide. A few people have said, "Oh, you're going to come back to Adelaide?" But I haven't had a response at this stage. But also coming up, I should point out, wherever you are in Australia, just keep your eye out. If you haven't followed Channel 31 or Channel 44 on Facebook, do that, because they are finally, it's taken about 3 years to organise, but finally in the next in the next week or so, they will be releasing the apps for CTV Plus, which is the online video on demand service of Channel 31 of community television in Australia.
Excellent.
So you will be able to watch. You'll be able to watch In Pit Lane when it goes to air. And In Pit Lane, by the way, will be on 3 times a week. We'll be the first run on Thursday nights, and then we'll also be back on Saturday afternoons at 2 o'clock. And then if you missed us the week before, we actually pop up at midnight on Wednesday. So there you go.
Midnight candle. Yep.
Okay.
Definitely. Will that be on demand as well too on the app?
That's on demand. We may not be there because of the finances and all the rest of it. They're very limited in the amount of space they've got, because we're basically a news show. They're more or less committed, but you will be able to watch live. But I'm not sure what the situation is with there. If you want us to be on there, by all means contact Channel 31 and say, "Hey, why isn't In Pit Lane on CTV Plus?" And they'll tell you in no uncertain terms. But no, that's but anyway, it's coming in a week as well. David's saying, need to get IPL into Sydney. Well, we need to get community television back into Sydney as well, because when Mr. Turnbull said we're shutting down community television, where everybody else said hell no, we won't go, Sydney went, "Yep, okay, we'll take the money. We're gone. We're out of here." They closed down within 24 hours.
David Toe, I've got an idea for you. Make yourself just appoint yourself as a communications minister, a federal communications minister of Australia.
Yeah.
And then you can create a Channel 31 up there in New South Wales and any other state or territory that wants it as well too. Not a problem. There you go.
But as Roy's pointed out, the CTV app for smart TVs phoned us. So I know that it's coming on both Android and iOS. I am hoping it will work on smart TVs. I'm assuming the Android version will work on there. I'm hoping so, because that would open it up to everywhere, sort of, if you on your smart TV. So, but I'm not sure. I know that it's been something they've been working on for a long time, and it does cost a huge amount of money to make that happen.
It was born out of the fact that we might not have actually been on air on community TV, so that was the big.
Yeah, well, that was the thing that motivated them. I mean, we should have done it years ago, but anyway, it's being done now, and it's coming up in the next couple of weeks. Oh, just very quickly, if you've got access to Channel 31. Keep an eye out for the movies on Channel 31. There are some amazing old movies floating around during the daytime and repeated over the course of the week. Some really interesting, some real classics you can have a look at. So keep an eye out for that as well. So subscribe to follow Channel 31 on
might hear a bit of Val Doonican as well too, Brett.
You might well hear a bit of Val Doonican, yes. So anyway, so I'll go off now and listen to some Val Doonican, and that'll put me to sleep, hopefully.
I'll get some Ray Charles out.
It'll certainly make me lose the will to live, that's for sure. Okay, so we'll see everybody next week. Now, I've just got to say, not sure what's going to happen, because we're going to air on at 9:30 on a Thursday night. Not sure what's going to happen with what we're doing here on Full Course Yellow. We've got to talk about that, because, like, in theory, it is an after show, but whether 10 o'clock might be getting a bit late for some of the people who might turn into a pumpkin. Night. It's a school night, yes. Okay, so speaking of I've got to be at school tomorrow. I've got to be at Sandown tomorrow at some ridiculous early hour of the morning. So it's probably time to say goodbye. Enjoy your weekend. Have fun, whatever you're doing. Keep it safe and keep it happy. And we'll see you next week, same time on Full Course Yellow. Until then, from all of us, thanks for watching and bye for now.
Great,